Is this thing on? Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. Yes, Grace Randolph is right to defend Morbius and to take to task the people that do bully movies and have been bullying this movie for weeks before they even saw it. Now, I don't have any reason to side with Grace Randolph. Full disclosure, she actually blocked me from Twitter in 2016 when we got in a heated exchange about Suicide Squad 2016. I liked the movie and she didn't. I didn't like what she said in her review about it and I acted her. We got in a heated exchange. I wasn't disrespectful, she wasn't, but she blocked me. So she's blocked me for a very long time. But it doesn't matter what issues we've had with each other. She's absolutely right on this situation. But where does this stem from? This stems from MCU fans with an agenda. They think if they can destroy every Sony Marvel movie, then Marvel Studios can continue to dominate and grab everything. Because they're not happy that Sony have the rights to Spider-Man, and somehow they're trying to create an agenda. If they ruin Sony Marvel, then Marvel Studios can take over Spider-Man and have ownership of it. Clearly, they don't understand how the licenses and the industry works, but that's their problem. So let's have a listen to what Grace Randolph has had to say.
Hello, and welcome to this week's Movie Map, where, what a shot, my God. And it all stems from the Snyderverse. Hold on, let me explain. See, first there was the success of some fans and a lot of the media in taking those movies down by relentlessly and mercilessly mocking them. I saw some people this weekend in the media and other areas express that they felt they knew what was best for filmdom, and it was their responsibility to shut down this kind of garbage. So that's one take. But then it's being used on the other side by some fans who, of course, were able to get the Snyder Cut eventually released to bring it roaring back to life. And then, based on that success, they're currently waging another brutal, this time, well, as brutal as the one that took it down, a brutal campaign against current DC movies to get the Snyderverse back permanently. Bottom line.
This is facts. I'm a big fan of the Snyderverse. I was hugely involved with Restore the Snyderverse, and I'm involved, or should I say that again? I was hugely involved with Release the Snyder Cut, and I'm very involved and supportive of restoring the Snyderverse. But we're not talking about all the fans here. Let's be careful. But there's a huge element of the Snyderverse campaign that spends all its time taking down all the DCEU movies that have nothing to do with Snyder. It does edge on bullying. It's very triggering if you're an all-round DC fan like me. And she's absolutely spot on about this.
It's ugly out there. So many of you are quick to argue that social media isn't real life. Well, it can have real-world consequences, and Hollywood is quite aware of this. From 2016 Ghostbusters to Star Wars to the Snyderverse and now current DCEU movies to now Morbius. I mean, wow, it's really spreading. Last year, Bob Iger gave a fascinating interview, and a lot of people didn't notice probably the most important thing that he said. And he said if he was going to invest in anything, he would consider investing or trying to get a job in the next big technological advancement, which would be to filter the internet, he said, filter what people are able to say, but I would also wager it would maybe take away internet anonymity. As I always tell you, money drives everything. Money, money, money. That's what it is. That drives every, altruistic thing that Hollywood does. It's because they think they can make a buck doing it. And that's why the internet has been able to run free with so little oversight. It was generating huge amounts of revenue and free publicity. But when the internet starts to hurt companies' ability to make money, well, business finds a way. I mean, there's no more dislike button, right? Well, at least you can't see it. So to you rage monsters out there, go to town, enjoy it. But just realize that with Iger's comments, and Iger is a very smart guy who really has his finger on the pulse of what's going on, particularly in Hollywood, that future that I just described is already clearly being worked on. People must be working on that technology for him to not only know.
What is she talking about here? Right. Anyone I mean, can start a social media account. They don't have to show their face. You can't track them. That means they can come into you and say whatever they want. Notice when I go live, and I don't get it hugely because I'm a very small channel. I barely have 15 viewers on a live, much less. But sometimes there's people who come in and say certain things and try and say certain, underhanded things about me and my character. Of course, I hide them from the chat very quickly. So there are ways of protecting yourself from these people. What she's talking about is people who can just start an account and say whatever they want, anything they want, and it can hurt people. And they're out there bullying movies, voting down movies, not because they truly are offended by Morbius, because it's an agenda. It's an MCU agenda. Now, she's not saying that, but I'm saying it, and I've been saying it for weeks.
About it, but to feel confident enough to put it in an interview. He wants to be able to look back and say, see, I told you. You're just making that future get here faster. All right, let's get back to today, which is pretty freaking bleak too. So Morbius, well, let's just look at the facts. A lot of you like to put all this emotional, personal drama. You think people or myself gets offended. I don't care. As I've told you before, I'm fascinated in the business, the drama of what's happening. I have no horse in this race. So you're just projecting your own things on me. So whatever. All right, so anyway, Morbius does have a very low Rotten Tomatoes critic score of 17%, but it's around 70% on the audience score, and that's actually gone up over the past few.
So, isn't this interesting that the critics meter on Rotten Tomatoes is 17%, but I think the fan score is about 69, 71%. How is that working? Well, clearly, look, again, with the audience stuff, and they've tried to kind of police it a little bit more on Rotten Tomatoes, but I think you can literally, once the film is released, give your reviews, and then they measure it like that. So, if you just wanted to support Morbius, even if you don't like the movie, then the fan scores can go up, but clearly, it's not fashionable to like Morbius. So that's a very interesting situation, because that's a huge difference between critic scores and audience scores. Is Morbius a good movie? Morbius is no worse than any middling MCU movie, or series. Hawkeye, very middling. That's no better than Morbius. Iron Man 2, a very boring movie that's got one of the worst villains in CBM history. Basically, Morbius is no better or worse than Iron Man 2, but the way people are talking about it is like it's the worst thing they've ever seen. This is not true, and it's fueled by agenda.
With 2.5 thousand verified ratings. Some of you swore it would go down the more that we're at it. Now, we'll talk about the cinema score, which is bad. Don't worry about it. But as I've said many times before, the Rotten Tomatoes audience score, even with the verified situation, can be manipulated. That also was a fix to try and take care of trolls. So you see, it's already happening. But it can still be tinkered with. I would take that with a grain of salt. But considering how horrible people have been to Morbius, you would think that the trolls who are trying to downvote it would overwhelm anyone trying to upvote it, if there were any bad actors in that regard. So the fact that it's at 70, that in and of itself is an achievement. That's amazing. I'm not going to die on a hill for Morbius, and I don't really think anybody would. I thought it was a pretty good movie. I think what's happening is that, I don't think that anybody, even anyone who enjoyed Morbius, would say it was more than a B. Not even a B+. But I think the shocking hate for the film and the fact that, it wasn't that bad is kind of made some people try to stand up for it. Stop kicking it, it's already dead. It's not that bad. If you're going to, I guess it's a matter of opinion, right? But you should at least respect that some people have the opinion that it's not that bad. But it just seems...
I said on Twitter the other day, and I made a video over that bit of Joker. I did a duet on TikTok where I made the point, when did films begin to divide us instead of unite us, everyone? You're watching this video and I'm sure you're going to be hating on me for this opinion in defending Morbius and defending Grace. But as a kid, I think I said this on my lives as well, we watched a movie. If we loved it, we'd be talking about it for months at school, school holidays. If we hated a film, we wouldn't watch it again. That was it. But you see what happens when you start doing things like aggregate scores and tomato meters and things like that. And, you know, audience kind of gradings in cinemas. And I don't know how long that's been going on for, to be fair. That could have been happening when I was a kid. It's bad that people can score a movie and it can get an A or a D plus, and people use this in arguments. It becomes weaponized. Rotten Tomatoes, critics and critic scores and reviews have begun weaponizing our entertainment. And this is the real problem here. Film now has become like supporting a sporting side. I support Manchester United. If you support Liverpool, we're kind of enemies. But we're not real enemies, but there's a hatred there, a healthy hatred. This is what film fandom's become. And it's really because we've become the era of the franchise. So I'm a DCEU stan, right? And then there's MCU stans. So I'm on this side, I'm on this hill, and you're on that hill. We can go onto Twitter and we can argue all day. The MCU has got the best reviews. It's the most successful franchise of all time. How can I deny that, even as a DCEU fan? But I still would say, and this is my opinion, that individually the DCEU has got better works of art, better movies that will be remembered in the next 30 years, rather than the MCU, that can only boast money rather than great movies. And I think that's an quite a valid statement. But this is the problem now. We've all got our sides. So movies can't be enjoyed. I don't anymore on social media, because I remember when Smallville was active and I used to sit there because I wasn't on the internet. I used to sit there dreaming. I wish there was people I could talk about my favourite show with. Well, I got what I wanted. Be careful what you wish for. You might just fucking get it. So now we're in this horrible era where this fan's trying to take down this film. Marvel fans trying to take down a Marvel movie. Not because it's bad, because they've decided they've got to take it down. But where does all this stem from, really? This all started when they heard of the messing around with post-credit scenes. Keaton was supposed to be in the movie as Toomes a lot more, and they regressed his appearance to, I think, a couple of post-credit scenes that are nothing. That is the studio's decision. But you shouldn't be that upset, because at the end of the day, this is a Morbius movie. This is about Morbius. It's all in there. His story's in there. But you're more concerned about what's going on. Or maybe you're pissed off, really, that Toomes has moved from the MCU to the Sony Marvel universe. Maybe this is the real issue here. So there's Marvel fans against Marvel content. They know that Morbius isn't the most terrible film in the world. As I say, it's no worse than a middling MCU movie, right? It's no worse than Ant-Man. It's no worse than Ant-Man 2, you know, and even like Birds of Prey, Wonder Woman 84. Morbius is certainly better than Wonder Woman 84, which was one of the worst comic book films ever made, in my opinion. No agenda, that's just my opinion. But this is where we are now. We're divided all the time. We're not celebrating movies anymore. This is what the internet that has done, but especially aggregate scores that are all to do with the internet. The tomato meter is very, very divisive. And it's these things that keep Hollywood in business and keep us divided.
Unfair. The Hollywood Reporter even ran an article about that. And for the Hollywood Reporter to run that article, that means that not only did a writer pitch it, but then an editor and the editor of that approved it. And so they felt that was a valid take. And trades don't like to get in on these kind of arguments. You know, it's not like it was one of one of the other sites that cover entertainment. So it's a pretty big deal for a trade to run that article. Now Sony, I'm sure, is like, what the we just released one of the most beloved films of all time. And that was great because it didn't seem like an MCU movie. I know a lot of you like, well, that's because return of characters from two other Spider-Man franchises that were made solely by Sony and that everybody loved and had very good memories of. Plus, they made Uncharted work this year, Mitchell's versus the Machines, which has been a very strong contender during the award season. And speaking of animation, what about the Spider-Verse movies that not only had no input from the MCU, but in fact inspired No Way Home? Spider-Verse, Sony did it first internally. I mean, they're not even involved in all the streaming drama, so they're like, how did we get sucked into this? Back to Morbius, to be fair, again, it did get a C+ cinema score, and that's real bad. That's a very bad cinema score. So how could that have happened, right? I mean, some people do like the movie, but I think that the people who I think the people who really like the movie are like comic book fans who don't have an axe to grind with anybody, like myself, who again don't have a horse in this race, and are like, yeah, you know what? I judged it at face value.
Don't have an axe to grind. And the axe to grind is on the MCU fan side because they want to take down Sony and they can't. I want to explain something to you very carefully. No one is taking Spider-Man away from Sony. In fact, the reality is one day Sony could buy Disney because Sony actually, with all their sum parts, forget about just the studio and the entertainment side of it, could fucking treat Disney like an ant and step on it anytime. I'm sorry, Disney fans, these are the facts. And as Grace rightly said, they did well with Uncharted, you know, the Spider-Verse animated movie. That's the reason they wanted to do Spider-Man No Way Home the way it was done. These were Sony's ideas, and of course Feige and the MCU helped. The only reason that nobody shit on the Spider-Man No Way Home movie, which has a lot of odd moments in terms of VFX. The VFX wasn't great, and some people have started to notice it. But it's okay, it's the MCU. This is the agenda here. It's the MCU agenda. And when they were taking down Batman versus Superman, it was MCU fans who started that hate because they were intimidated by the DCEU being in competition with them. This is the truth. I remember the memes, I remember the GIFs, I remember it all, where we had the whole thing, where we had that whole board of the first Avengers movie saying we didn't explode all these buildings, and then we had a meme from BVS or Man of Steel that had all that destruction. Do you remember all of that? All that hate stemmed from MCU stands, and this is where it stems from again.
But it was entertaining. As I said, it was like Daybreakers. And then also, I think maybe people who are fans of Jared Leto. I've also seen some, speaking in the Snyderverse, some Snyderverse people really supporting the film because of Jared Leto's involvement and his own campaigning and support for the Snyder Cut, which he, of course, was involved in. But mainstream, speaking of not having a horse in this race, the mainstream moviegoer who's not on social media and just goes to the movies, because movies did okay. Why would they? What would make them give this a bad score? They don't care about building a Spider-Verse and what Sony's doing. I think it might be Jared Leto. He might just not click with mainstream moviegoers. I think they just might not like him. It happens. You know, we've talked about, for instance, Ryan Gosling, a delightful actor. I love him. I actually think Jared Leto's pretty good. Sometimes he goes too far, but I think he can deliver some really good performances. But you know, and some people, Jared Leto does have his fans, but he just doesn't have enough. He just doesn't have enough. You know, there will be stands online for certain actors and talent, and it's like, well, that's great, and you can maybe you know.
So let's finish there with Grace Randolph, because she's made some very interesting points, because it doesn't matter if someone's blocked you, like Grace has done me. It's important to kind of listen to people. And Grace is like Marmite. Sometimes she can have some great takes, from my point of view, and not have great takes. It's not like she's consistent. Yes, she's had an agenda against Henry Cavill. I don't understand that agenda. And the other actress whose name I forgot as well. So it's not like she's on the side of the angels. And I understand that. But just because some people have acted badly in the past, it doesn't mean they can't have good takes in the present. Everything she said here is absolutely spot on. And I'll take you back to weeks ago. And if you're a loyal follower of mine, you know this. I was calling this behavior out from Morbius weeks ago. Now, everyone, as usual, because I always see these things before anyone else does, has come to the party. The bullying of this film, because it is, as I say, no worse than any other middling CBM from any franchise. It doesn't matter, right? And she starts off this video talking about her video, talking about the takedown of The Last Jedi, Ghostbusters 2016. Now, The Last Jedi underwhelmed me and bored me. By the end of the film, I didn't want to watch Star Wars for a long time, but I wasn't angry. I was just like, I can't, it doesn't matter. 2017, I didn't have a good kind of rhythm with films anyway. There was Justice League, The Last Jedi. It wasn't going well for me. And I was so excited for The Last Jedi because the trailers looked amazing. But the film just bored me. But there was an aggressive takedown of The Last Jedi because Hollywood really decided to be blatantly political. In terms of the female Ghostbusters movie, I personally feel the movie's okay. I don't think there's an audience for Ghostbusters anymore, male or female. I think they should just put it to bed, leave it alone. I'm not even a big fan of Ghostbusters of last year, Ghostbusters Afterlife. I thought that was a dull movie. Ghostbusters is supposed to be funny and fun, right? It has its moments, right? It's exciting, serious moments, but it's supposed to be funny. The original Ghostbusters was started by Saturday Night Live comedians. And this film, for me, is overly serious. And at least Ghostbusters 2016 tried to be fun, tried to be funny. I don't think it's a great movie or anything, and they have to look at themselves for the passive-aggressive kind of commentary they were having, like girl power and things like that. I think if they wanted to be if they wanted to deal with equality in a Ghostbusters movie, there should have been 2 men and 2 women in the team, and we wouldn't have had this problem. But the way people were taking that film down just because there was women in that movie was absolutely ridiculous. But the fault lies with Sony, I think, who were responsible for Ghostbusters, and the people who were trying to take the film down. And of course, what happened with BVS, Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice, and I've never seen a film bullied that way before. Morbius is the first time since BVS I've seen a film bullied. Now, from my point of view, Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice is art. It's an amazing film. It really is. Now, it really has no place to be in a mainstream franchise of a DC shared universe. That was the mistake with Snyder. If they wanted Snyder, they should have put him in a pocket universe like they're going to do with him in The Flash and let him do whatever he wants. But he should never have been involved in a mainstream DC extended universe. Now, that was the mistake. But I thought the reaction to BVS was absolutely ridiculous. And it had a big box office opening weekend. It had a big drop-off. It made just under $900 million in the global box office, which isn't bad, but a Batman and Superman movie, admittedly, should be making more money. But the attacks that film got were ridiculous. And this is what the internet does. So whether you like Grace Randolph or you don't like Grace Randolph, it doesn't matter. This time, I believe Grace Randolph is right. And you may never hear me say that again. So you better rewind this video a few times because it may not ever happen in the future. This has been Movies TV Mad with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives, please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. And I'll see you again tonight when I'm live. Until then, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.